So today we're diving into one of the biggest, most powerful ideas of the 20th century, the absurd. And we're going to look at it through the eyes of two absolute giants, Albert Camus and Samuel Beckett. They both stared right into the same void and came back with some wildly different answers.
You know that feeling, right? That little sense of dislocation, like you showed up to life and everyone else got a script but you? Well, that feeling, that's the absolute heart of the absurd.
And Camus just nailed it with this definition. See, the absurd isn't some property of the world, and it's not something inside of us. It's the gap. It's that confrontation between our desperate human need for meaning, for answers, and a universe that just stays completely, coldly silent. It's the clash. Now, this whole idea didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Before World War II, there was this general kind of comfortable faith in progress and tradition. But the war just shattered all of that. It blew up what the critic Martin Esslin called the cheap and somewhat childish illusions of the past. Suddenly, an entire generation felt disillusioned, totally adrift in a world where all the old rules had just collapsed. And that, right there, was the perfect soil for absurdism to grow.
Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to dig into our two artists and their totally opposing ways of dealing with this. We've got Camus and his Revolt of Order, and then Beckett's Art of Chaos. After that, we'll see how, unbelievably, they ended up with a shared vision of what it means to be human. And finally, we'll talk about why any of this still matters today.
So let's get this straight. Both Camus and Beckett are looking at the exact same problem. A universe that's suddenly lost all its illusions, all its light, where humanity feels like an exile. But the way they responded as artists, fundamentally totally different. And this slide, this really is the fork in the road they took. For Camus, art is a rebellion. It's a way to force some kind of order onto a life that has none. But for Beckett, the goal was the complete opposite, to find a form of art that actually reflects the mess. So let's see how that works.
First up, Camus and his Revolt of Order. He basically argued that everything we do as humans is driven by this unreasonable desire to give life a form it does not have. And for him, art was the best, the most noble way to do that. This quote really frames art as an active fight. Camus believed the artist's job is to take the messy, chaotic, fleeting reality of the world and wrestle it into something clear and unified. It's why his writing is so precise, his novels so tightly wound. He's literally building a new world that's both deeply personal and somehow universal. And you can see this philosophy so clearly in his characters. I mean, think about Marcel from The Stranger. He's a real guy. He has a job, a girlfriend, a place in society. He lives in a world that we totally recognize. The absurdity for him isn't his existence. It's the friction, the crash that happens when his true, authentic self smacks up against the arbitrary rules and expectations of that normal world. All right, now let's flip to Beckett, who just goes in a completely different direction. If Camus wanted to create order, Beckett wanted to find a form that could, live with the chaos. He thought that traditional, well-made art was basically a lie, a neat little package for a reality that is anything but neat. Beckett fully leaned into what he called an art of failure. He believed no artist could ever really, truly capture reality. It's impossible. So the struggle itself, that impossible obligation to say something when there's nothing to say and no way to say it, that became his subject. He wasn't trying to win. He was exploring what it feels like to be set up to fail. And just look at how different his characters are. They are not specific people like Marcel. They're what one scholar called generalized shadow men. They barely have names, no jobs, no real pasts. They just kind of exist in this void. For Beckett's characters, the absurdity isn't a conflict with the world. It's the very air they breathe. It's the fabric of their reality. So we've got two completely different approaches, right? Camus builds order, Beckett shows us the chaos. You would think they'd have absolutely nothing in common, but this is where it gets really interesting. And here's the big idea. Even though their art looks and feels like it's from different planets, their diagnosis of what it means to be human is stunningly similar. Their methods were total opposites, but where they ended up was almost the same place. Okay, let's break down this shared vision. Both of them were obsessed with alienation, that feeling of being a stranger in your own life. Both stared right at death, which Camus called the most obvious absurdity. And both saw that the universe is fundamentally irrational. It just refuses to play by our rules or give us the logical answers we crave.
So, what's the point of all this? Why should we wrestle with such a bleak idea? Well, the answer, for both Camus and Beckett, really boils down to a single word: dignity.
You see, the writers of the absurd believed that most of us just sleepwalk through life. We hide from reality behind habits and routines, what Beckett called the ballast that chains the dog to his vomit. The whole point of their work wasn't to make us despair. It was to shock us awake. Real human dignity doesn't come from pretending there's a meaning out there that we just can't find. It comes from looking the absurd truth of our situation right in the eye and choosing to live with integrity anyway.
And that leaves us with one last question. Camus chose to tell a story of rebellion. Beckett chose to tell a story of endurance. Both of them found a way to shout about human value against a backdrop of total cosmic indifference. The question they leave for us is, what story are you going to choose to tell?